to go on record on.
That's true. Everyone give a round of applause for the HOV tickets. So I got them on record. So hi, like I was saying, my name is Carr, and I'm going to be giving a talk on the practices, positives, and pitfalls of mob programming in relation to my experiences at Hunter. There we go, I can do that way. So a little bit more about me. I got my bachelor's in computer science at California State University, San Marcos, so I'm very much a state local in San Diego kind of girl. And I've been a software engineer at Hunter Industries for almost a year now, specifically in the mob programming department. So a question I get pretty often is, what do you do at Hunter, or what is Hunter? So a little more background. Hunter is an international commercial and residential irrigation and lighting company. We make sprinklers, we make lighting for the home and for large attractions. And these mobs create the software that supports these sprinkler and lighting systems. So you can see right here, actually, an example, my team, the Pilot Command Center software for golf course irrigation, which just launched 3 weeks ago officially. This is the kind of thing we do working with controllers and working on the field with irrigation. So what is a mob? A mob is a peer-based, multi-membered, meaning 2 or more, so it's greater than just a pair way to create software. And the idea behind it is that anyone can be a part of the mob regardless of their skill level, regardless of their hierarchy in the system. Mob itself can consist of multiple smaller mobs. For instance, my mob has the pilot mob, but then there's 3 smaller mobs within that, all working on the same project. And there's different roles assigned to each person within this mob. So like in the example, we have the 4 people on this one mob, all looking at the same screen, but we have the person on the keyboard who's the driver, and everyone else that is navigating them as they work through the code using a tool called the mobbing timer, which you enter all the names, give the amount of time before the auto rotation goes through to putting the next navigator in the driver position, and so on and so forth. And those are our 2 strongest tools that are actually open source if you wanted to go download the mob timer. Very easily accessible. So I wanted to show this video because we love to show this to people when they ask, what does Hunter look like, or how does mobbing look? This was from 2016, so it's a little out of date in the layout of the office. It's changed since then, there's been more mobs, but it gives a really good example if I can get to it. Let me see what this is. Maybe I can get to it. There we go. Oh. So throughout an 8-hour day, we usually start with 1-hour learning sessions, meaning that's free time for us to research anything that we are interested in, whether it's related to our projects, whether it's related to just personal interests or side projects. Every day we get an hour dedicated to ourselves in the morning or in the afternoon, depending on when you come into the office. So you'll see everyone starting to go into their mobs at 9 o'clock. There's a retrospective happening in the back. And Hunter is kind of the birthplace of Woody Zuhl and Chris Lucens's mob programming, and so you'll see a lot of the, if you've heard Woody Zuhl's talks on mob programming and Hunter in general, you'll see a lot of the practices come in here, where the teams are all aligned, there's no upstanding meetings. In this count, we had 6 mobs. Currently we have, I think, 8, and split up into 4 different sections of teams. How we produce our code, actively happening in the background in a continuous integration, continuous development sort of environment. So we're pushing out product to production every day almost in the way that we do our software development. Our product owners are very close nearby, so we had stations on the side for them. Now they have their own dedicated desk to come mob with us, to come talk to us about the product. And everyone is very happy because everyone has a sense and a hand in the design and the architecture. All of it is handled by us. And it's a very collaborative effort. And then lunch hits and everyone goes away. We all leave at noon. The office becomes just a dead zone of going to computers. We wanted to do some emails, go to lunch. We got a ton of restaurants down the street. It's really great. And there's a lot of hand sanitizer. We believe in hand sanitizer when you're sharing one keyboard, naturally, especially during flu season. So then everyone comes back from lunch, immediately regroups into their mobs because we have our set teams. We know what we're doing at the start of the week till the end of the week. We have the driver and all the navigators doing their rotations at their own discretion. So no matter what mob they're on, they will probably have a working agreement of, we usually do 5 to 6 minutes rotation. That way everyone is constantly engaged in the mob. All the stations on the side, as well, do some corporate stretching. It's important. And you'll notice too, over here in this station, Chris Lucian popping in and out because the flat hierarchy allows for our director to be there and present, but not always mobbing with us. So he is there kind of as the way to middle ground between us and the business so we can focus on our work, which is very nice for us. Everything's on wheels because the only solid parts are this wall here in the center, the poles right there, and that wall there, and a little wall over there. Everything else is on wheels because the mob setup is constantly changing. The more people we get and the more mobbing stations become required. So before the clock rolls around, we're getting to the end of the day, everyone's starting to have their final meetings. They merge for their collaboration at the end of the day, so we know where to start for tomorrow. And these three mobs right here are all part of the same team, but they're all working separately because there's an agreement for each on what they'd be working on. And two, to notice a lot of these boards that are throughout are how we manage in the Kanban style of how we do our software. So it's a lot of communication that way.
I noticed there's a laptop at each station.
Yes, we each have our own personal laptops as well given to us.
So is that used when you're mobbing to like do lookups?
Mm-hmm.
And is there only one, or does every navigator have one for like lookups?
Well, all of us personally have our own laptops given to us when we start. A lot of the research can be done mob style if all the navigators are kind of at a loss. Then you would mob the research as well on top of that. But yeah, personal research can be done that way, and it's for our emails if you're stepped away saying, hey, I need to do something. Okay, so just a couple more keynotes on top of that open flat hierarchy floor plan I was talking about. The idea of why we did our floor the way we did was also purely on cost, because doing 2 flat screens, a keyboard, a mouse, standing desks, and now these muffling walls, because it'll obviously get very loud in a room of all concrete and wooden floors with 30 plus people when they're all mobbing together. A cubicle for one person alone is $8,000 versus you getting a flat screen where 4 people can work on it at once, very considerably cheaper. And it allows for mobs to move around and be able to collaborate better. So you have the freedom to move between mobs with every mob having a mutual agreement. So you're not just stuck in one project, go around. It's a very collaborative effort of spreading the knowledge that each team has. And it causes an increased visibility of the code. So you have many minds of different skill levels all on the same code at the same time, learning together. And it creates a separation of concerns between the driver or the person typing and what they have to write, because they have a team around them, so you can focus on interpreting and typing rather than having to think. So you get the code coming out a lot faster, rather than, sometimes you'll be typing and your brain starts catching up, you forgot kind of what you were going for, and now you're in a weird ground. The driver is pure listening, and so it's pure typing. And the time before the driver will switch is dependent on the mob, so that you get that different sense of interaction with 3 people, 4 people, and so on. So in order for all this to kind of be possible, what we've done at Hunter is created our lofty goals, which is the department-wide agreement for how mobbing should work, and the kind of morals and boundaries that we've put around mobbing so that everyone can work in a very effective, safe environment. I'm going to be coming at mob programming from strictly a social interaction and innovation standpoint. There is a whole separate talk on the business and how you code, but those are very unique to each individual business, and how you code is how you code. So I'm here to just strictly say the social benefits of mob programming, how you can interact and build that team innovation. So how do we interact with Hunter? We always consider kindness, consideration, and respect in everything that we do. We treat everyone how we want to be treated. There's a lot of respect in that department, especially when everyone is at different levels of skill and everyone is at the same hierarchy. We don't have managers, we have us and then Chris, who is our director. Everyone else is on the same even playing field, therefore we give a lot of respect and a lot of compassion when it comes to programming. This leads into being honorable, holding trust and showing appreciation for your mobbers. They're giving you the trust that they're allowed to share their ideas, that you listen to them, so you've become this mutual agreement to hold each other to esteem and trust in each other, and when you're a driver, you have to trust your navigators to lead you down the correct path. And of course, psychological safety, because none of this would be possible unless you felt confident and safe in sharing your ideas without any fear of repercussions or judgment. So how do we innovate on these ideas? Well, we are continuously developing our lofty goals. These will not stick around probably. They will get innovated more because we experiment frequently. And due to this experimentation, then we can share what we have learned and develop the software community by coming to meetups like this. You'll see us a lot at conferences, Agile conferences, and the Mob Programming Conference coming up in April as well. So can you hold questions until they have the cue part? Okay. So what are the positives that can come out of mob programming based on all these practices that we're seeing here at Hunter? So focusing in on kindness, consideration, and respect, leading to trust being built, creating a psychologically safe area. It brings more confidence in people being able to share their ideas. And people wanting to share their ideas more creates a more productive environment and better communication between teams, better working relationships, and obviously better code coming out of all of this. Creates a more open environment for bringing new people into the mob. So when we hire someone on, and they've never done mob programming before, it can seem a little intimidating of everyone sharing their ideas constantly, and they aren't quite familiar yet, they haven't gotten to the code, they don't feel like they have the prowess. It brings in a sense of leveling up the team together, because now this new person, who might not know as much, is hearing all these ideas, and we're drawing the ideas out of them, and therefore, you'll hear me say leveling up quite often when I talk about mob programming. Everyone's skill level evens out, so everyone gets a better knowledge of the code together, everyone learns together, and even senior programmers get the chance to teach what it is that they know and articulate to people that might not know or younger than them in the industry what it is. So, and you don't get that often a chance to teach, so that's really good practice as well. And because of all these ideas being shared, we move towards an agreed upon solution much faster. So as a result of the experimenting frequently, because we're continuously developing goals and practices and developing the software community and taking new things from the software community through conferences, this leads to us retrospecting very often. So my team retrospects once a week for a good solid hour chunk. A lot of teams will retrospect after every rotation to see what's working, what I need to fix. Mob programming is in itself a constant experimentation because of the human element that is involved, and everyone is different, every company is different, all software is different. But this leads to very meaningful retrospectives that lead to action items that we then use as our experiments for the week. And if those work, we build them into our practices, and if they don't, we try something else. So these mob dynamics really do grow over time because of this continuous process of experimenting. And this lends mobbing to be a very unique process for every single company because of who you work with, what the environment is purely like. You know, we have a very open floor plan with everything on wheels versus not all companies have that. Most companies are used to cubicles. So how do you work in that sort of environment is all ended up in experimentation. This experimenting mentality can be moved to other sectors of business, such as HR, finance, marketing. I think there's over 30 companies now. I'm not sure how many in San Diego alone, but there's over 30 companies now doing mob programming, from airlines to finance companies to wide variety of fields, because it's that same experimenting mentality where if you can collaborate efforts and ideas, mob programming is worth a try. And there's two different types of experiments that I wanted to emphasize, in that there are team-driven experiments, meaning the ones within the mob, so based on the people that you work with, and the department-driven experiments, where everyone comes to a consensus after a retrospective saying, department-wide, let's try this. And it'll benefit all of us. It'll benefit the company as a whole, compared to just the mob as a whole. And it's the combination of those two that make it work very well. So I get a lot of questions, so I thought I'd just do the most common ones I get, and if there's more afterwards, then we can go from there. But one of the common ones I get is, how do you prevent a single skill developer from driving the direction of the code, or how do you prevent egos from controlling the direction of the mob? Because it can happen, you know, when you start mobbing, or if you have a senior developer working with a junior developer and they The senior definitely knows where it should go, like they know exactly the code, they've been with it for a while, they want to go this direction. How do you prevent that? We do something called strict navigation, which is kind of like the training wheels for when you're learning mob programming. And it's a style of mobbing where the roles and their rules are very strictly assigned. So you have your driver, right, at the keyboard. They're only allowed to listen to their navigator, because the navigator is the one who has the final say on what the driver does. This forces them to have the discussion with the other mob members and have to articulate and interpret what that discussion was. If they don't articulate it right or interpret it right, then more discussion is fueled. So if you imagine the senior programmer here and the junior there having a discussion with other programmers of different skills, they're learning it in a way that they can articulate it to the senior. And then when the senior rotates back in, they continue on that path. So it kind of forces the collaborative effort to move in all directions to all levels, if that makes sense. And this is a really great way of when you're just first starting mobbing to preventing one person from being navigator constantly and everyone else kind of feeling disengaged, which can happen quite frequently when there's 15-20 minutes between your next rotation to be driver or to be main navigator, right? You get a little disengaged, you look at your phone, or for us, we are guilty of this, we have our computers right there. So we're like, oh, let's go look at something real quick, and then we get lost, right? So to keep that discussion going and to keep the level of engagement up, you have to be able to be in the discussion enough to navigate on your own directly to the driver. So it keeps you in the mindset. So how does one form a mob of their own? Or how do I start mobbing for the first time when no one has ever mobbed before in my team? And we have discussions about this a lot at work because it is kind of different for everyone. Obviously, it's based on setup, it's based on the people you work with. But what I believe to be a really good start is starting as small as you can. So first off, be completely transparent about the process of mob programming, because it is a different kind of process. It is not something of, this will be really quick and everyone will get used to it immediately, we'll get it done in a week. It's a process that takes time for people to get used to, in our experience. And you have to find individuals who are already open and ready to this idea of experimentation with the team-driven development and this team mentality. And as a very added bonus, being familiar with the Agile Manifesto principles, which you will see plastered all over Hunter everywhere for how to develop very good lean software, if you're not familiar with the Agile Manifesto principles, definitely worth a read. I know a lot of people that are in contact with Hunter a lot, Woody Zool, really believe in these principles, are signers on the documentation of the principles, so definitely worth a read. And bring together a variety of different skills. Don't just bring someone that's, everyone's mid-level to senior. Bring someone who's brand new, someone who's been there for a while, someone that deals strictly in architecture, doesn't really do a lot of front-end development. Bring all these different skill sets together so you can really instigate that kind of discussion that comes from the teaching and the practices of software development. And to practice, I would not suggest using code that you work on every day, which sounds counterproductive, but practicing with code katas or smaller project features that you're familiar with that kind of seem almost too simple will allow you to focus more on the mob programming aspect rather than the very difficult problem, we need to get this done, I don't know how, and then you get lost in that confusion if you don't focus on the process. And strict navigation is always a fun to try and experiment with too if you're finding difficulty listening on one person and getting the ideas out. So how do you resolve conflict within the mob? Or how do you choose a single direction to move towards when there are multiple ideas in this mob? Because you have 4 people, everyone with a different idea, everyone with a different design. I don't know how many times we've gotten stuck on what color blue to pick on for like half an hour on the UI design, and we're like, okay, we need to just pick something. We practice with the yielding to the junior voice. So if the senior developer cannot convince the junior that their path is the path that is right to go with, you choose the idea of the person who is the junior. And I say this with quotes because junior and senior are relative terms. It doesn't have to be strictly senior full stack compared to associate. It could be the person who's been on the project 5 years versus the person who's been on the project 1 year. Or it could be title or knowledge of that specific language. Anything that would put that person maybe in a not as strong knowledge state. And we do this because then it provides more learning opportunity for everyone in the mob. Again, the idea of leveling everyone up together, the person with the least amount of experience, or the junior, will have more of a chance to practice the paths they wouldn't usually take in that kind of environment, learn from their mistakes, have other people teach them what it is they didn't know. And so everyone gets this leveling out on their communication skills, on their understanding of the code, and again, the senior gets an opportunity to teach and understand what they don't know, because if they can articulate it well enough to convince the junior, then they maybe need to have more practice on displaying their ideas better. So how do you avoid going in a non-productive direction when there are so many ideas? Or how do 2+ people stick to a single MVP? Which can get difficult because we get kind of stuck in everyone has ideas, we should go this direction, we should go that direction. And my favorite thing that naturally comes out of mob programming is vertical slicing, because it is entirely a necessity for when you have so many ideas, getting to that final production piece. You know, not going off and, like I was saying, discussing the color blue that'll be on the UI. You know, get the button, get the service behind it, get the database, push production. That continuous integration, continuous development that we practice is based off the vertical slice as often as possible. And so as you mob program, you have 4 people there, all keeping each other in check. It becomes a natural process that forms out. And what is something I could put into practice right now? Or how do I not disrupt my current process while moving towards mob programming? And this is something that we try to encourage in a lot of companies, because if you invest in your employees, it only turns around better for you naturally, is learning sessions. So dedicated time to learning together every day. At Hunter, we have 1-hour learning sessions every day as an individual, or we can group on it. We can mob our learning as well. And we do extended learning sessions on Fridays. We do 3 hours on Fridays where we do a lot of our own little open spaces where everyone collaborates on ideas. And so when you practice mobbing learning together, something you would naturally do on the job, mobbing itself becomes so much more natural because you're already building that communication base with each other in a language you know, it's something you don't know, and learning to articulate it. Something we do at work as practice for public speaking is lightning talks. So we give 5-minute talks on any topic of our choice. It could be related to programming, could be related to the hike you took yesterday, doesn't matter. But as long as you can practice learning to articulate ideas, mobbing becomes much easier. And of course, there are pitfalls to mob programming. There's pitfalls to anything with so many positives. I wasn't going to come in here and say, it's fantastic, just do this. It'll all work out perfectly. There are pitfalls, but there are ways to avoid them as well. So after I gave you all these positives and said, we love it, mob programming is not for everyone. It completely depends on the culture, the dynamics of the team, because that openness to the idea of mob programming and working together on those ideas and collaborating is super critical for it to work. If you have 4 people that are not interested in working together at all, you're not going to get that good collaboration. It's not going to result in effective teamwork. And something we use quite often to display how when you bring new members on, when someone leaves the team, when there's some dynamic that changes, because adaptiveness is natural for mob programming to work out, we use Tuckman's stages of group development. So you bring someone on, you're reforming the team, the agreements don't work as well anymore, you have an unclear purpose, you need some more guidance and direction again, it's not as fluid. You know, you start storming, so you're at the lowest peak of your performance, impacting your team's effectiveness because there's going to be conflict, there's going to be different personalities being introduced, there's going to be some power struggles again, maybe some egos, maybe some just pure navigation issues. But once you work through that and you keep pushing through that, then you start to norm. You start to get to the point where new agreements are being formed. There's more roles and responsibilities being laid out, people are becoming more comfortable, There's more facilitation of ideas happening, and then you start performing, and you become better than you were because now you have a more clear vision and purpose. You can focus on that goal. You're not focused so much on introducing the mob programming or figuring out the agreements again. You're focusing on performing, and then you finally reach that adjourning when the task is complete, and you're back to that status that you were before of comfort level with mob. And this happens, I'm sure, within any company. When someone new is brought on, there's a time for them personally when they don't feel so right, and then they start getting more comfortable. This happens just at the mob level. So all the people start to feel this. And so mobbing does require communication with people, naturally, so there will be conflict. Not everyone's personality always meshes perfectly together, unfortunately. And so there will be conflict, and there are plenty of ways to resolve this conflict. Some good, some not so good. Dianna Larson, who's a huge proponent of conflict resolution in a positive and compassionate way. She's a huge part of the Agile community. We've done some training with her, and she's amazing. I would highly recommend looking at her and what she has written and her research on it for peaceful conflict resolution within teams. It's fantastic. And continuous experimentation is key to becoming successful because there's going to be restructuring of the layout. There's going to be reforming the teams, figuring out new dynamics, new practices, everything that works, and new lofty goals all the time. Because a mob agreement is necessary when everyone is working together. There has to be a common ground for everyone to meet on. Right? And all of this comes out of experimentation. So that's what I have to say. Questions?
I haven't missed it, but like I saw like a training wheel thing. Like you have to train.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So where would the newest person to the mob program usually be at start?
Newest person as in?
Newest person like new hire, let's say. Like newly hired person just joins in the
Dead in the middle. Just
right in the middle.
Lost in the middle. Depend on their turn. If their name comes up, they're here, there. When we bring someone in new to the mob, we don't usually bring them in separate of like, oh, you can watch for like a week or two and then join. It's, hey, day one, let's start.
Sink or swim.
It's not sink or swim because we don't let you sink.
We
bring you up to it. Yeah. But
it's
it's what we found to be one of the most effective ways to bring someone up to speed. And again, that brings up the forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. When the new person comes, we're going to be here for a while, right? Because they don't know the code as well, or they are not as comfortable with mob programming. I was lucky in that I was an intern before, so I had 3 months of what I consider like mob training before I joined the full team and went out into the real hard knocks side of the department. So I was more here because I didn't have to learn mobbing again. So there's that extra difficulty of you have to just learn the dynamic of mobbing on top of the code. But when you have so many people with experience as well, right, nearby to ask questions, to give you feedback, to check on you, because we have the agreement of kindness, considered respect, showing appreciation, and psychological safety. No questions are withheld. It's a completely safe idea of, no matter how dumb you think the question is, ask it, because then you get feedback, you can build off of that.
I saw cycle again. What exactly? So other than like, I guess what the so I see like so the direction going this way is more explicit, but from I don't know, the driver to the those
mobbers.
people, yeah,
mobbers.
Yeah, what exactly are mobbers getting from the navigator? I mean, from the driver? Is what I think.
Well, when you first start, because strict navigation is very much the navigator talks to the driver, and so whatever the driver is typing is just how it's going. But the navigator can obviously say, wait, stop, don't type that, this is what I meant. Obviously they didn't articulate it well enough, or there's different levels of navigation, right? So you have very high level of, we want to do this. Oh, I got that, I know it. And that's usually a person who's very comfortable with the code, comfortable with people, know what they mean. When you first start, it's a lot of, okay, write this, this, and this, and this, period. Write that, you know, a little lower level. The other mobbers, if you think about it, this is kind of the keyboard is isolated in itself when it comes to strict, and then this is the discussion. But as the mob becomes more comfortable, the driver becomes part of the discussion. This is just a way of really separating out those concerns, so this person can focus on listening and interpreting and understanding, and they can focus on the discussion. I don't think my mom has done strict navigation in a long time. It's very much the driver's like, hold on a second. No, I'm not doing that.
What's the pace of rotation? How often does somebody stop being driver?
Depends on the team. So 7 minutes per person as they start rotating in, and so you'll get, if you have 4 people and it's a 7-minute rotation, it'll be 21 minutes before you go back to the keyboard kind of idea. So the idea of keep engaged, because that's a long period of time to not be typing, right? I've done mobs where it's been 4 minutes, where it's literally like, all right, I type a sentence, and then you walk away. So it's dependent on comfort level. When someone's usually new to the team, we usually do like 4 or 5 minutes, because it feels very uncomfortable to be up there and like, what do I type? Right. And so again, more experimentation dependent on the mob. Usually 5 to 6 minutes is a good comfortable level to start with. And then if you're doing 2 people, and sometimes it does end up more pairing than mobbing, you can do longer than that. Because obviously we'll be switching back and forth so often, it's more disruptive than effective.
Did you find 4 people to be the most optimal?
That's usually what we try to stick to is 4 people. We do 3 sometimes, just because like everyone's schedules. Not everyone can be in the office all the time. Most of the mobs are for sure at least 3. We try to guarantee always at least 3 on a mob. If we have too few people, then they just become a larger mob, so it'd be like 3 to 5. But if you go too large, then there's too big of a time gap before you go back to the keyboard. There's too many ideas going around, and some people feel very pushed back and not wanting to share because, oh, I had that same idea, or there's already so much discussion. So you kind of have to find a balance of personalities, engagement, and comfort, because obviously if you have a small space, like we have a couple stations that are really small, and so it's like 5 people would be like ramming, you know. We all want a desk space too to like put our laptop down, so we don't have individual desks. We're constantly moving. But like, can I put my stuff down here? Is that fine? So it's all up to experimentation. What we found is 4 is pretty optimal, because you get 3 people discussing consistently, and different skill levels as well. It helps with the production.
Was there a moment when you started doing mobbing that you felt like, oh wow, this code overriding is a lot better than what I'm used to from my past experience?
Yes. So I found when I wrote code, like by myself, I got to a point where I would get stuck in my own head, or I would get off on a tangent, or it just wouldn't look clean. And one of the things that I didn't go into as deep, but in one of the ways that Hunter does write code, and in our agreement, is that we write clean code and we go for 0 bugs. And I know that sounds unrealistic going for 0 bugs, but what we found is while programming, we're eliminating the bugs and the smelly code as we go, because there's 4 people keeping everyone in check. Of like, hey, real quick, look at refactoring. It's a constant refactoring, it's a constant clean, because you have 4 different people looking at it. Versus when one person looks at it, you can kind of get stuck, you get rushed, you get, you know, all these different in your head. And so then you step back, versus in the moment as it's happening. We're getting to that very cool code, and we're releasing production code with very limited bugs. I think my team now got a total of 3, and they're being pushed out of production. It's been very good. It's worth the try.
Since you've been working, your teams, you had 3 bugs from production code total.
Right now, as of currently, I think since I've started, obviously there's been some popping up here and there, but the way that we push out our code, it's headed for the day. And I've been on 2 separate teams, both of them the same.
Yeah, what's 0 boots?
It's like a play on 0 bugs.
Oh, okay.
It's a bug.
Okay.
So we strive for 0 bugs. So whatever a bug comes up, it's our highest priority. It gets resolved immediately. We do not let it sit. We have feedback come directly back to us. So it's something we investigate and handle. Because we have a separate mob that can break off and do that. So
Okay.
one mob will be like, hey, we're gonna take this feedback. And they go off and they do it. The other two are still productive.
I guess coupled with that, I've heard that you don't have bug tracking software.
We do not. We have fully automated testing both at the unit level and the end-to-end integration level. And that handles all of it for us that we can find. If a bug does come up, it's from what we've noticed, it's from our feedback sites. So we have our pilot, we have our bug forces that handle that for us and they give us feedback. And the product owner has that as well. So he's in that direct line of contact, and so he keeps us up to date on that as well.
What's the longest time you say you need to fix something?
Gosh, the longest one I think I can remember is the Juice, because that was a very deeply integrated problem from legacy software that we could go into. And that wasn't related to our project, it was related to our company-wide engineering.
So you don't have anything to tell. I run into the same sort of trouble, but we found literally the processor bugs that it took us 6 months to root cause that the processor failed once a month.
We do a lot of error logging, we do a lot of behind the scenes with people in the scene way to they see this process coming, they can go back really once and see what's happening. All of our tech we run through a CI/CD pipeline using OCD, and so those run all the tests. They run hardware tests, they run their hardware tests. They will check that with the current version of firmware, everything will work properly with this firmware is we tried as best test coverage as we can. Obviously, if someone's plug isn't all the way in, we can't usually fix it. We're like, do you want to plug it back in? That's the last resort. But we have been very good at identifying bugs or issues as they come up.
You depend on other people's software libraries.
No. Well, besides a lot of basic coding libraries, most of it is written by us. So we have all our own internal firmware and APIs and all that.
I noticed that you had learning time.
Yes.
And you were mobbing on your learning time. How do you decide what things to learn if you're in a mob?
So sometimes it'll be with your own team, so you've been working with them all day, you know what you've been working on, you know what's coming up, and so you'll say, hey, do we want to do some research on it, that way, because all the design, the research, the architecture design is all on us. It is fully our process from beginning to end, and so we can see what's coming, you know what we've done, or even better, when there's a new person, what they don't understand, and so it also gives us a teaching opportunity. We do now a lot of our own Agile open spaces. So I think it's once quarterly now on a Friday where we have our long session. We'll do the same, we'll post learning sessions, what that person wants to talk about or focus on, and we can go around to different stations and do that. And so you spread learning across the different mobs and across different product teams like that. So it's a lot of communication. We value, as one of the Agile Manifesto principles as well, face-to-face communication over email or phone calls. Face-to-face is much preferred, and so you can get up and walk to another mob and say, hey, real quick, sorry to interrupt, but mobbing is built on the idea of interruption without repercussion. You can go to another team, ask a question, because you're just sharing knowledge. It's only positive for the team as a whole to do that.
And on that same note, you had it at the beginning of the day?
So some people have the beginning. It depends when you show up, because we do strict 8 hours. If you show up from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, you can do it, or you can do it from 4 to 5. It just depends on what time of day you come in, or you can schedule someone else like, hey, I'm going to be in the office 4 to 5, do you want to learn together? Okay, very communication based.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so it depends on when you want to do it. I do it sometimes during lunch so I can leave a little early. I'm just like, I'm eating while I'm learning. I'm like, okay, and I'm ready. Yeah.
I got one more. So if you've got a group of mobs,
Okay.
how do you share information and coordinate between each mob group?
So And it's, again, I hate to say it over and over, it's entirely experimental within the mob and how the dynamic is. I'll give some examples from how we do it. So my mob, because we are a mob of 3, all working on the same project and sometimes in the same code place, and we're constantly having to be mindful of what everyone's doing. That's why we do a Kanban style of here's our list of tasks, which mob is taking it, and what path are they going down that way. We have no problem in our mob saying, hey mob, need to talk real quick, take a 5-minute break, everyone discuss what's happening, like we're not sure where to go with this, can we get some ideas, can we get, is this a good path with what you guys are thinking of going down as well? I know other mobs are very separate, so some work in a completely different area, and so the collaboration happens around a specific goal that the product owner has in mind, and that they've got a giant group meeting to discuss for the week. And some mobs are small, like one mob, and so it's active communication. So it's really, I think, dependent on what you're working on, for one. Because if you're working on something that's very unrelated, the discussion can be done in one quick, mobbing the idea of it, and then you could separate. Or it could be, we're working same place, same time, we need to talk, very actively. So it's whatever team dynamic you're comfortable with. And also, I think, dependent too on the skill level of everyone involved, because if you have a mob of everyone that's at the same skill level senior, they're just gonna go for it, like there's more confidence there versus a mob of all maybe junior that aren't as confident, they need to communicate more, and so on. And how you form mobs is, again, entirely up to you. So we do a dice roll every Monday of who's gonna be where. Of our 3, so like, all right, everyone, the next 4 people go over there, next 4 we roll a dice. So you work with different people every single time, and it's great, because then, you really get to build different communication styles, you get to experience different levels and different learning, and that's just within my mob of those 3, versus the other ones are very stagnant. They're very much like, these are the people that are a little more specialized towards that, or are interested in learning more about that, we'll put them there.
So those mob of those 3, that's 3 mobs, not 3 people?
3 mobs consisting of 4 people each.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And of all different levels, from been there only, I think the newest person who was old intern of mine as well, so I'm super happy to have him back on. He's been there a month and a half maybe, or less, and I've been there a year. It's different skill levels, and there's people who've been there for 10 plus years. So then you get to work with a variety of people.
And is it so the product owners or designers are always separate from this mob? There's like a different process where their input is added. So it's like you start from like the story, the epic arc, or something along those lines.
Something along those lines. So we are different that we keep our product owners very close. So like you saw in the video, our product owners were like just off to the side doing their work, whether it was expense reports, whether it was figuring out priorities, but they're close by for quick questions of like, hey, this is coming up, where do you want to go? Like if they thought, this is going to be something simple, and we're like, we've looked into it, we've researched, we've built on it, we need to communicate this back, this is not as small a thing as they think, right? Most of the time, with the mobbing mentality and the trust that we built with our product owners, they can give us their tasks, they can give us what is they see the outlook being, and we can go from there. And that requires a special kind of relationship with your product owner. But the mobbing mentality, we like to include them, and so they'll stay there and work with us while we're designing something, while we're working on something, and they'll ask questions. I have really lucky privilege that my product owner used to work in coding, used to work software, so him coming in as a product owner, he's got that basic knowledge of like, oh, okay, I see what's happening here, where to go from there. But despite product owner's experience, we've never had an issue with, if you keep them close and keep them as part of the mob and in the active communication, then you get that the priorities and the stories and everything flow very naturally. And when you have multiple mobs, they can be working on multiple stories, all at once kind of thing. So it creates maybe a little bit of a bigger dynamic for the product owner, but if they're up to that kind of task of our input as well as their input, then it creates a really good.
So we need to see the lightning talks. So the once a month, does like everyone do a lightning talk? How's that structured?
So we do, I actually have one tomorrow. Haven't started. We do 5 minutes, can be literally anything. We've had someone, my favorite one was a guy brought a Cards Against Humanity deck, and he filled it up with not safe for work cards. And he just draw them and has to go impromptu, just make it work and just talk, and it's fantastic. But it gives you that practice and that comfort. So there's 30 of us now. And we all sit around, and there's, I think, usually 8 to 10 people scheduled for that month. And we have a certain quota we have to meet of like you have to do a certain amount of lightning talks. And you can pass on if you're not ready, and you can move on, just do the next one. But it's like just next person comes up, you listen, you can give feedback if you want. If they ask, I would like feedback on my talk or on how I present, because a lot of those talks actually get moved to, I'm going to present this at a conference in a couple months, kind of practice with you guys. And it's a very quick hour and a half, usually in the morning, of just listen. It can be tech-based, it can be not, but it's a chance to really listen and practice your skills. And it's one of Chris Lucian's biggest priorities, is everyone knows how to public speak to a certain degree of wellness and comfortable. Because you can't say it to your coworkers, you can't say it to strangers.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
You talked about the defer to the June, which I think is fantastic. What do you do when that's ambiguous?
We usually go with, if it's ambiguous, to the point of like everyone's kind of on the same level, everyone's been there for a decent amount of time, all the ideas are good, we would usually go down the path of the idea we never would try. Of like, that's a very interesting idea. Let's try it. Something that is the most, not really out there for us, but not something we would have instantly been like, that's the solution. They're like, hey, what if we tried this? And then intervene that. So again, that's why I say it's very ambiguous terms, senior, junior, what that means. It's, if that fails, it's more of like, what could we try that might build this whole new learning, this whole new opportunity we never would have gone down in the first place.
You talked about in the more experienced programmers have a chance to teach. What do you mean by chance to teach? Or what forms does that take?
So, from my experience, and I say this in that we've had a couple people at Hunter have been college professors, and I had them as college professors. Not everyone, I feel like, has the chance to teach or give a talk or articulate what it is they mean technically to others. And so, if the seniors have the chance to solidify the knowledge they know, because if they can articulate it and convince, the junior voice or convince someone else, hey, this is the path we should go on, then that, gives them more of a learning opportunity, like, I really know my stuff. And so, chance to teach, meaning a chance to almost test themselves in what they know and how confident they are.
I'm giving, professing, is this more like real time on the go mentoring?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's my favorite part.
I had also a question about the retrospecting.
Yes.
Is that, I'm assuming that just means like going over, is that like a term specific? Is there like sort of rules around that?
So,
or is it just more generic
So
idea?
there's the idea of retrospection, which is looking back and reflecting on what it is that you've done, right? In a generic case, of I could retrospect on my week and think, okay, I did really good here, I could improve here. When we mean retrospecting in a team environment, I can't remember what it comes from. There's a specific place for research, but if you look at retrospecting in mob, I'm sure it comes up quite often from all the blog posts that come up around it. Retrospecting in that as a team, we do a style format of, we take stickies and we write down based on the format. So it could be like happy, sad, everything that was good during the week, everything that was bad during the week. We write it all down, all of our thoughts, all of our feelings, throw it up there for everyone to see. Again, the vulnerability that comes from that, of wanting to speak your mind on something. And we vote, and everyone gets a vote on what they want to talk about the most, and we talk about that. And create action items out of that, or experiments to do through throughout the week.
Could you give an example of something, maybe last week's retrospective?
So last week, actually I can think about one much clearer. So we had a show, we had a software show that we were going to for our software. And the weeks leading up to it were kind of hectic because it was very much like we have to get it done before the show and all these new requirements, and we're like, okay, can we get this done? And it was a little stressful for everyone, but we nailed it, right? So the Friday after the show, that retrospective was completely about how did we feel that week? Why did we get so stressed? What was holding us back? What were our impediments? What were our positives? And we had an issue with our pipelines and the computers themselves, like the virtual machines, were not performing optimally, and so it was stopping our pipeline from moving, and so we couldn't deploy. And so we're like, it's ready, but we can't, like physically the hardware will not let us. And it was such a frustration, so we immediately made that Friday an action item to look at that, clear the machines if necessary, work with the internal services department to get better machines, do something. And so to improve the process, we created an action item for that kind of thing. And we do that every week.
Cool.
How do you measure your experiments? How do you like plan and have this got a 7, this got a 5, we should use the 7.
So the experiments are also voted on, so when we make a list of action items, everyone votes on the one that they're most willing to do. There is a department and a mob agreement to follow through with those action items. The person that was facilitating the retrospective being the person that basically set up what kind of format we're going to do, facilitate the talk of like, are we good with it, are we not, do we want to talk more? And there's a whole science behind retrospecting in the software department, which is very interesting to me because there are so many ways to do it. And again, finding the dynamic that works well for your team is an experiment in itself. And so everyone votes on it, and it's the facilitator's job to see that action item through. And the facilitator rotates every week as well. And we have a facilitation HOA, as we call it, that handles. These are facilitators in the office willing to do your retrospective with your group. So they're an outside source as well. That helps to make it more, that's not the word I'm looking for, but a different kind of retrospective experience of someone outside the group looking in their perspective on it. I think we basically measure the effectiveness of our experiment of, did it work? Did it happen? If we didn't follow through with the action item, it wasn't a good experiment because it wasn't realistic.
Okay. So you don't have like a fitness function?
No, we kind of, well, we have the idea of when we make an action item, it has to be a SMART action item, because the acronym is SMART. So it has to be SMART, it has to be meaningful, it has to be achievable, it has to be realistic, it has to be done in a certain amount of time. And if the action item wasn't finished, maybe it was too big, maybe we need to retrospect on that action item again next week. Maybe we need to shrink it down, maybe we need to make a reminder for ourselves, maybe we need to do something different. Maybe it wasn't actually that important at the moment. We thought this is the thing, and then we're like, we kind of already doing that, right? Like, it's what we call no-brainers at that point. Of like, well, why are we retrospecting on this action item? We already do this. Well, we put in the no-brainers, and it adds to our agreement and practices. So we measured on, by the time we reach next week, did we do it? Did it work? Did it help? And so the retrospectives become retrospectives of those retrospectives before. And so you build this dynamic and that culture off of that. So we don't have a number, we have a feeling.
Yeah. Fair enough. How do you, I mean, you talked about having the Agile Manifesto portions posted up. And you talked about this box of boxes.
Our lofty goals, yeah.
That this is something that is changing. How do you convey this level of information to the team?
Onto the team as a whole?
Yeah.
So the team is the one that develops these goals. None of these goals are developed without everyone's input. So we do have a lot of department-wide retrospectives, at least once a month, because we have the monthly update that our director gives us. So this is what's happening, this is what I've been noticing, stuff like that. And so all of these goals were developed with all of us in mind, and we decided on this. And from the practices that we've had, from history from whatever. All of this was designed by us, not just our director. Because of the flat hierarchy, it's us, and the director is kind of just like our voice to the outside. You know, he does handle all of the logistics of the department, which we're so thankful for, so we can focus on coding. But all of this is based on our input. Like, we had a retrospective today about our computers, right? Like, we are so happy we have our computers, but could they be better? Is there a better way of communicating besides just, you know, Skype or all these different means? You know, all of the changes in the department side, like these goals and practices, are from us, and because we shape our own environment. When we convey these to people outside of the company, besides having them posted everywhere in the building of like, these are lofty goals, and we explain them to people, as they change, we explain why. So it went from a place of Agile Manifesto being like the guiding light to how can we apply what we know with that and how we operate. And so it became a more realistic kind of goal for the whole department. But none of it is done without us.
And that's like your code of conduct or those agreements, the mob
Yeah,
agreement
it's part of,
you're
yeah.
talking about.
These lofty goals are part of the agreement that we have as a mob, as employees of Software at Hunter.
And it makes it specific to your
So,
culture
yeah.
and everything. So
And specifically to our, as a mob as well, because we are very different from marketing or finance or mechanical engineering, because we are a manufacturing company. And so the software department is kind of a unique entity in itself already. And so it makes it in a way that when you walk into the building, everyone becomes on that same agreement and that same page. And so when you move between mobs, it doesn't feel strange.
And does anyone else in the company have they started to incorporate some of this? I know you mentioned that like other companies are starting to do some mobbing outside of programming.
So there's a lot of companies, obviously in San Diego, that have done this now in all different fields. And within Hunter itself, we work closely with the other departments, so internal services, engineering, marketing, and finance. You know, we create products to support what they're promoting, and so therefore we have this strong teamwork. And we bring them into the mob sometimes, you know, like, hey, come work with us to help us work through this business objects problem, or through what does a golf course really want? Like, can you explain that to us in a code way? How would that flow? So I wouldn't say they've integrated into their own processes, because again, it's not a small change to do mob programming. We had the super fortunate opportunity to start 10 plus years ago with mob programming out of sheer emergency. The funny story behind mob programming is that it was Chris Leishan and his coworkers, and they had a deadline, and one of the people getting close to their deadline came in and told everyone, I'm not going to make my deadline. Can you come help me? We need to all work on this. You know, this is critical. We need to do this. And the problem that took him 2 days, they solved in 2 hours, all working together. And they stuck that way ever since, because that's how they found working together. They were much stronger than apart. So we've been doing that since the inception of the software department. Marketing, of course, has been around a little bit longer, and they have their processes in place, but it's not so much, I think, the mob programming, but the practices of the collaborative work, the experimenting with new things, the psychological safety involved, those have started to spread more to the rest of the country. And those are important foundations for moving towards a different dynamic style.
So, and I apologize if I'm like taking too much time. I still have minutes.
Yeah.
How do the sound muffin walls work?
They're awesome. Okay, so I'll show you the picture again. So I want to note too, just real quick looking at this video. So see this corner up here? How we had like just the 2 screens there, and I think there was one here, and then all those desks there. That's the same area as this picture. That's me. And now we have the 3 stations right there and all of these walls. So the reason we got the walls is because when there's 30 people, it gets very loud. And everyone's talking and trying to interpret, and you don't want to keep going, what? What did you say? Because as a driver, then that stops the flow of thoughts and stuff like that.
Go ahead.
Oh, very good. I was just going to say, they are the most simple things to implement, They're not cheap, obviously. Like it's a giant sound muffling. It has that insulating to it, and then there's the 2 canvas sheets, and it's all on wheels. So like when we're having a meeting, we can wheel these 2 in, and then there's 2 on this side as well you don't see, so we can kind of muffle around the other mobs, and they don't hear ours, and we get distracted with our retrospective. So those are completely on wheels as well. And then we actually installed 2 right here and 1 right here, in this wall here, since then. It's basically like the padding in a soundproof room, you know, like.
It's more for echo than, it's not.
Yeah, because I mean, it will
It's not
still
isolated.
bounce off like the floor and the ceiling, but it's more of like if you heard people whispering like this rather than like, hey guys, we got it, you know, at the very top.
Yeah. No, I worked with some teams trying to do that, but then none of the things were terribly successful.
Yeah,
And there was an interesting balance between like, so this is XP, so pairs, but groups of 4 to 6 kind of positioned around, and again, 30 just a few. And we got benefit from teams hearing things about the teams beside them, and we were kind of fighting against, and so it was not a balance, and we never thought they then we had worked out that well. So
I think it works well for us just because we are all kind of, well, we are working on the same projects. I think because we've gotten used to the noise in a weird way, and we're used to hearing, like, we're working over here, we can hear what they're doing over here, but we also have that sense of respect and trust of like, we're not going to interfere, like, we don't know what their path they're going down, we're going to let them work, and then we'll all retrospect together and see what they were doing, and, you know, if they need help, they'll come to us. But, so like this mob would be this section, and then there's a whole set of walls back here, and that mob actually does like a weird U-curve with themselves. There's one over here and one on the other side as well. And we've kind of gotten used to hearing each other, and so you get that focus, you get that narrowing in of who am I listening to. And when we interview people, I was saying this earlier, we interview them in the dead center of the room, with all the walls somewhat around them, but enough that they will still hear the noise. And there will be times when like people are popping popcorn over in the kitchen over there, and you hear it and smell it, you're like, and then we're laughing over here because of like a joke or something. And so you come into the company already expecting that, and I feel like that really helps to in the dynamic of it, being like, I expected this to happen.
So I heard you use the FW and I think you're a device company. Which is weird. They come to these meetings and like I'm usually the only person who goes from I don't see any devices in the picture. You live your devices and what noise do they contribute? You have like solos lying around?
So we, I guess I should clarify, we are primarily software. We work with the firmware people because we're integrating, obviously connecting to their firmware you're talking to, and we do collaboratively as well work with engineering if they need guidance, or it's very much communication between both departments. In this one, actually, our hardware and all that lives here, and it has like the firmware version and like all in the face back of it, and that, like, I've never noticed noise, I think because it's designed to be quieter, but,
Does your firmware?
One more question after this.
okay. No, they do not, from what I see. They have collaborative effort when they're working on a project, but a lot of the time there's not enough of them. The engineering team isn't as, I wouldn't say big, it's a big team, but they're spread across so many projects that it's not as easy for them to do well because there's not enough of them. Harry probably would be a lot easier, but they don't work the same dynamics. We have a very unique structure for Hunter. But yeah, so we have everything we need right there on each station has exactly what they need for it. But we are constantly talking to the firmware department for new updates, new pieces of tech, whatever is being released or out there for us. We work with it. Is there one more? Speak now.
Can I ask you one part?
Oh gosh, right.
How do people get, how does performance rated? How do you deal with, fire? How does that happen? Does it happen?
So, and this is very specific to Hunter because Hunter, again, very different things. If ever visit, which we do love visitors if you ever wanted to come visit, promotions and that sort of thing are handled purely on a peer basis. So you are recommended by your peers for promotion, based on how you perform, based on the stories that they tell our director. And he takes those stories to heart of what really means of going through the different roles. And again, that's a whole other presentation I'm sure Chris
Does
gives
this happen
constantly.
at sort of intervals, or is it just ongoing?
It's more of like intervals when, yearly budgeting comes around that he deals with and stuff like that. It's when promotions based on budgeting, the logistics part of business. But that is purely peer-based. Firing, I've never experienced, actually. I don't think anyone's been fired in a while. People leave naturally to go to the company.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's infrequent, but
it is infrequent, and we love our jobs. We really, everyone leaves like sour, like I don't want to leave, but I gotta move towns for 6 to 3 or
You guys said that guy that was fired on day one.
He was different because we didn't even meet him. HR fired him. We didn't. We're like, oh gosh. He was great. I liked him. Whatever. Bad jokes. Who knows? And the firing process, and this will launch into a whole other angry discussion. Chris jokes our only firing offense is making an estimate to the product owner. and so that's a whole different discussion. Look up hashtag no estimates if you want a really funny Twitter rant to go watch. But firing I've actually never experienced, and I can't even conceivably think how one would get fired at Hunter, to be honest, because it is not based on skill. It's based on your performance in a way of are you actively engaging, but then there are ways to bring that engagement up, and I've never experienced anyone not being engaged and not being into it. After the interview process, you'll know instantly if Hunter's a fit for you after the interview. So I've never experienced firing, but promotion is very peer-based and based on your skill development.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for living in accessible.
Thank you for doing that.